morning everyone, Persephone Jane here. Our next installment of the 2020 book review series is, let me get the glare off, Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. Fun Home is an autobiographical look at the author's childhood, growing up with a sexually closeted father, and how that affected her own story and self-identity. If you're looking for a good family relationship story that revolves around differing sexualities, then yes, I could see this being a very powerful read for someone. But being someone who didn't live that existence or isn't living that existence, again, I couldn't connect to those portions of the story, and those portions of the story were quite strong and quite prevalent. So for me to connect with them was a little more difficult. I connected with the difficult relationships, and I connected with, the tragedy of loss and that kind of thing. But as far as how all of that pertains to her own growth as a character or as a human being, because this is autobiographical, I didn't connect with that just because it's a different existence. To read it and see it and understand it, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to see this perspective on a family growing and changing, and adults learning about their parents as adults, like children learning about their parents once they become adults. Does that make sense? You learn a lot of different things when you become an adult, and you can finally look back and say, oh, and this had a lot of that in it. So for that aspect, I could relate, but on an individual character basis, not so much. And that's not really anybody's fault. That's just our differing lives. But as a story, it was very literary heavy, and that's where I, oddly enough, as a writer, that's where I found I was unable to connect. What does that say about me? I don't know. Just gonna smooth right over that and pretend like it's not even there. We'll deal with it another day. I don't read graphic novels. They are difficult for me to follow, to figure out which word bubbles and pictures come before other ones. Hold on. Okay, a page like this makes sense to me. There's a long one and a long one and a long one. This makes sense to me. I can follow that. It gets trickier when we start going here. I start here, I do this one, obviously, because it's long and it's all together. But then do I go up here and do this one, these two, and then down here and over here? Or do I go here and then down here because this is where I started and I've come half the page? Do I finish this and then go up here? I just don't know. And the stress and anxiety of knowing whether I'm reading things in the right order, it's too much for my brain to handle. So I do not read graphic novels. I saw this in the window of a bookshop, and I was so intrigued by the family tragic comic tagline that I picked it up. I was further intrigued by the fact that if you look here, it says that it's now a Broadway musical, right? So you put those two things together and I'm like, okay, there could be some good stuff in here. All right. I'm going to step outside my comfort zone and I'm going to try this. The sales clerk also highly recommended it. She said she loved it. She had to read it for class or something and she loved it. Intriguing, good recommendation. I'll try it. I was not expecting the book that I got. I was expecting a lot more comic and a lot less tragic. Not that it was overly tragic. It was tragic. But I was expecting more comedy within that tragic, or in retrospect of the tragedy. And there wasn't. The back talks about how it's written, how it's enlivened with humor, rich literary allusion, and heartbreaking detail. The last two of those are very true. It is heartbreaking detail. Yes, the details in it are heartbreaking, and you read them and you just go, man, that sucks. The humor, like I said, is not as prevalent as I wanted it to be, because that's how I deal with tragedy, is through humor. So that's a big component for me. The rich literary allusion was much larger than I expected it to be. Like it spent a large portion of the book comparing, especially the very last part, comparing the life of her and her father to characters from works that I hadn't read. And so as a reference point, I didn't have one because I hadn't read those stories. I know of them in the sense that they are popular stories, but I've never read them personally. I've never studied them as a text, so I don't have the same reference points that she had. And thus it made like understanding what she was trying to say about the story like more difficult, because she was referencing something that I could not reference. And rather than referencing it and explaining it, most of the time it was just referenced as an explanation. And so that was not helpful for me as a reader, to be able to follow what she was really trying to say about these things. Overall, it was good, mostly because the graphic novel component made it a very quick read. So I didn't feel like I was like trudging through it to try and make myself read it. By any means, it was super quick because of that. And if I had the chance to see the Broadway musical, I might, because I think back to Wicked and how the book was not full of comedy, like at all. And yet the musical is hilariously rendered. So I could, and I could see the points where this is comedic being expanded, and I could see the points that are inherently comedic in this story being expanded on the stage to be something that I would totally jive with. So if I had the chance to see the musical, I probably would. If you've read Fun Home, let me know in the comments what you thought. Let me know what I might be missing to help me connect. We'll chat with you next time.